Tutkijat eivät kuitenkaan ole päässeet yksimielisyyteen siitä, miksi muun muassa sosiaalisia taitoja ja oppimiskykyä rajoittava sairaus on yleistynyt viimeksi kuluneen 20 vuoden aikana. Syitä etsitään nyt perinnöllisten tekijöiden sijaan muun muassa ympäristötekijöistä ja ruoansulatuskanavan häiriöistä. Tämä dokumentti nähdään myös huomenna myöhäisillan ohjelmistossa ja sunnuntaina iltapäivällä.
Autismi yleistyy nopeasti kaikissa teollisuusmaissa. Valtaväestöäkin enemmän se koettelee joitain maahanmuuttajaryhmiä.
This is Ali, he's 13 years old, he's autistic. This is Afshir, he's 12 years old, he's autistic.
Ruotsin ja Yhdysvaltojen somaliyhteisöissä autismi on jopa 4 kertaa yleisempää kuin muussa väestössä. Myös Torontossa autismi on somalialaisten keskuudessa keskimääräistä yleisempi.
This is my brother. He's autistic.
Syytä autismin yleisyyteen monissa maahanmuuttajaryhmissä ei tunneta. Ongelma ei kuitenkaan kosketa vain niitä. Autismi yleistyy kaikkialla, eivätkä tutkijat osaa sanoa miksi.
What we were told was, we have no explanation. Things like this just happen.
Autismin yleistyminen uusien maahanmuuttajien parissa viittaa ympäristötekijöiden osuuteen. Jotkut tutkijat ovat alkaneet epäillä, että perinteisesti aivoperäisenä pidetyn häiriön taustalla saattavat olla suolistobakteerit.
The traditional way of looking at autism as a specific brain insult that is largely permanent and unreversible may be somewhat outdated.
Nykyään autismin hoidossa keskitytään paljolti käyttäytymisen säätelyyn. Autismikirjon kehityshäiriöt ilmenevät monin tavoin. Lapsi voi olla lievästi tai vaikeasti autistinen. 50 vuotta sitten autismiin sairastui arviolta 1 lapsi 10 000. Nykyään luvun arvioidaan olevan 1 000. Kaikkiaan autismikirjon häiriöitä esiintyy noin 1% väestöstä. Pohjois-Amerikassa sellainen todetaan 1 lapsella 90.
If you continue this up, then eventually, about 25 to 30 years' time, you get autism as the norm in an American family rather than a rarity.
Tilanne näyttää erityisen huolestuttavalta maahanmuuttajien keskuudessa. Joidenkin tutkimusten mukaan autismi on erityisen yleistä afrikkalaisten, karibialaisten ja aasialaisten maahanmuuttajien lapsilla. Tutkijat epäilevät syyksi muutoksia elinympäristössä.
Hi baby, how are you? Say hi, say hi. Okay, let's go home.
Torontolaisen Adar Hassanin 4 lapsesta 2, Abshirilla ja Alilla, on autismi. Syntymän jälkeen kumpikin kehittyi aluksi normaalisti.
The first year of his life, I would say, was as normal as you can be, even more normal than my 2 previous children. But suddenly something happened.
Ongelmat alkoivat, kun Alin toistuvia korva- ja hengitystietulehduksia hoidettiin useilla peräkkäisillä antibioottikuureilla.
He started, refusing coming near me. He started crying all the time and going under the table, things like that. He began walking his toes and refusing to eat food, just want to drink, cow milk. Also, he was having a diarrhea, 10-15 times a day. And his eyes, it's not even there, it's like another world. And no one helping, going this doctor after another doctor and after another doctor. How many doctors I've been when I was struggling with Ali's condition, no one helps.
Go outside or you wanna play?
Monien muiden autistien tavoin Adarin pojat kärsivät myös ruoansulutuselimistön vaivoista. Niiden vakavuus näytti korreloivan autismioireiden voimakkuuden kanssa. Pojille maistuivat vain hiilihydraatit ja maitotuotteet. Kun Adar karsi ne ruokavaliosta, tapahtui huomattava muutos.
We adopted the Western diet, but when my kids got diagnosed and did a lot of research, I find out, all the ways always better, old-fashioned way, cooking, from scratch, doing as fresh as you can,
Abshirin ja Alin keskittymiskyky parani ja levottomuus väheni. Ali on kuitenkin täysin puhumaton ja molemmat pojat tarvitsevat jatkuvaa huolenpitoa.
Juice, yum. Hey, easy.
All the new immigrants is facing the same thing, and even the Canadian, they're having the same issue and same problem. But something really needs to be explored because these kids they're really sick.
Adar ja hänen ystävättärensä etsiytyvät monien muiden apua hakevien vanhempien tavoin Chicagoon. Kaupungissa järjestetään vuosittain laaja autismikonferenssi. Vanhemmat ja tutkijat tulevat sinne tutustuakseen tuoreimpiin tutkimussuuntauksiin ja epäsovinnaisiinkin hoitokeinoihin.
We're New Beginnings Nutritionals. We're a supplement company, and we're highly
With New Life Foods, we offer gluten-free, casein-free, and soy-free essential fatty acids improves brain function for children with autism.
Hi, this is Isaac. He's a robot.
Hi, I'm Amy
We are
from
here
Living
from
Well,
New
designed by Amy.
Hi, we're standing in front of some hyperbaric oxygen chambers. We use this in autism.
Satisfied with it, I will personally, as owner of the company, refund your
There is
money.
a revolutionary
This
new
will
product that has come out on the market that is a
GPS real-time tracking
accelerator.
device for children with autism. Check us out at www.
Tieteellisesti tutkittujen hoitovaihtoehtojen puute turhauttaa vanhempia.
As parents, we want to use science-based treatments and therapies, but there's a certain sense that we can't wait for science to catch up.
Käsitteellä autismi alettiin 1940-luvulla viitata oireisiin, joiden aiheuttajana pidettiin vanhempien ja etenkin äidin tunnekylmyyttä. Jääkaappiäitien syyllistäminen jatkui vuosikymmenien ajan. Autismin syytä on haettu niin saasteista, televisiosta kuin ruoka-aineallergioistakin. Teoriat aiheuttajasta ovat lisääntyneet sairauden yleistyessä. Andrew Wakefield esitti autismin syyksi rokotuksia. Hänen tutkimuksensa julkaistiin vuonna 1998 arvostetussa tiedelehdessä ja sitä seurasi toistakymmentä vuotta jatkunut kiista. Wakefieldin tutkimuksen tulokset on sittemmin todettu virheellisiksi, mutta monet vanhemmat ovat niiden takia jättäneet lapsensa rokottamatta. Lukuisat tutkimukset ovat osoittaneet, ettei rokotuksilla ole yhteyttä autismiin. Siitä huolimatta teorialla ja Wakefieldillä itsellään on yhä kannatusta. Viime aikoina tutkimus on keskittynyt autismin perinnöllisyyteen. Torontossa on käynnissä kansainvälinen geenitutkimushanke, jota johtaa Stephen Scherer. Tutkijat arvioivat, että autismiin liittyy jopa 100 geeniä. Tähän mennessä yhteys on saatu varmistetuksi 6 geenin osalta.
The goal of our research is to find which genes are leading to the development of autism and So when we make a discovery and we find a gene involved, it starts to explain part of this medical mystery. But it doesn't tell us specifically why that gene has been changed or mutated. We also know through other studies that environmental agents can lead to increased rates of genetic changes. So certainly that's a possibility. We can do those experiments once we know what the target genes are, because we can test in the laboratory which environmental agents have effect on how those genes are replicated or turned on or turned off.
Chicagon autismikonferenssissa Derek McFabe tuo esiin uuden ympäristötekijöihin liittyvän ajatuksen. Hän pitää tärkeänä johtolankana autististen lasten ruoansulatusvaivojen yleisyyttä. McFaben omintakeinen teoria tuntuisi selittämään monien vanhempien kokemukset.
Thank you very much. You have a huge bacterial population in your gut, and when you eat, you feed them. And what they produce has profound effects on behavior. When you really look at the research, infection and gastrointestinal infection and antibiotic use seems to be one of the underappreciated but rapidly emerging causes possibly for triggering or worsening this disorder.
Get propionic acid out of the brain.
This is our hypothesis. So by not eating carbohydrates, it may be a reduction in feeding these bugs to make it.
Harvardin yliopistossa työskentelevä Martha Herbert on lastenneurologi, jonka erikoisalaa ovat autismi ja yleisvoinnin vaikutus aivoihin. Hänkin arvelee, että suolistobakteereilla voi olla yhteys autismiin.
The gut microbial area is exploding before our very eyes right now. It's becoming clear in more and more publications that gut bugs affect the brain, that gut bugs affect psychiatric conditions, and that there's a mind-brain-body continuum through the gut microbiome. And so I think it's more plausible than we ever could have imagined that gut bugs may profoundly affect brain function and behavior, including for autism.
So this may be one of the reasons that particular diets that seem to be in some patients.
Teoria saattaisi selittää ruokavalion vaikutuksen Adarin poikiin ja autismin yleisyyden Toronton somaliyhteisössä.
It doesn't surprise me to hear that if you shift a population from Africa to America or Canada, that you get a shift in disease profile, and that would include autism potentially.
Lontoon Imperial Collegein Jeremy Nicholson on kollegoineen vuosia tutkinut ruoansulatuskanavan bakteerien terveysvaikutuksia. Aineenvaihduntatuotteet antavat paljon tietoa elimistön toiminnasta. Niitä pääsee helpoimmin tutkimaan virtsanäytteistä.
So there are thousands of different metabolites in urine, and all have got their own unique radio signatures. So what we do is we drop a sample like this, it's got about 0.5 ml of urine, into a very strong magnet. It realigns all the magnetic nuclei, and we can pump in radio waves and then listen to each molecule basically sing its own frequencies.
Muutama vuosi sitten Nicholson alkoi kartoittaa autististen lasten, heidän sisarustensa sekä terveiden verrokkilasten virtsasta löytyviä aineenvaihduntatuotteita.
Matt, hi. Hello. How is it going?
So we have some more tweaking to do, just of the hardware, really.
So I've had a good idea for a change.
Absolutely, yeah, yeah.
The question was there anything about autism that made it different to normal? And so we profiled a number of children. We found they're actually quite different in many different respects. One of the most interesting being that they have significant differences in gut microbial metabolite profiles, implying that the gut microbes inside them were working somehow in a different way to normal children.
Nicholson on havainnut sairauskirjon muuttuneen länsimaissa 60 viime vuoden aikana. Tiettyjen häiriöiden, kuten autismin yleisyys, on verrannollinen maan teolliseen kehittyneisyyteen.
Since the Second World War, we really entered the modern age of technology, and with that has brought us the blessing of McDonald's and all the other things like that, and all the highly processed food. It's also brought us antibiotics.
About 2/3 to 3/4 of American antibiotic production is used in livestock. They are not designed to eat grain, they're designed to eat grass. And the grain basically, to put it crudely, gives them acid indigestion, which you kill off with the antibiotics. And then the antibiotic affects them, gets into the water supply. We started using a lot of pesticides and chemical fertilizers. We've used a lot more corn, which has omega-6 fatty acids, but not omega-3. We use a lot more refined foods and processed foods, which don't have as many nutrients as they did in their fresh forms. So I think that there's a relationship between food policy and vulnerability to autism.
So we've changed more phenotypically, more in terms of our biological signatures, our biological makeup and our lifestyle in the last 50 years or so, than we have probably over all our time since the Ice Age. Right, that's a giant change in our biology, so it's bound to have a whole series of consequences. And one of the consequences, we think, is that the microbes, the fundamental activity of the microbes and the composition of the gut microbes has changed.
Norjalainen mikrobiologi Ture Midtvedt on tutkinut suolistobakteerien vaikutusta terveyteen ja varhaislapsuuden kehitykseen. Pohjoismaiset tutkijat ovat olleet uranuurtajia suoliston ja aivojen välisten yhteyksien paljastamisessa. Heidän ajatuksensa valtaavat vähitellen alaa.
And no, the focus is in the GI tract, and I'm very pleased with that. It should have been done decades ago.
Midtvedt on tutkinut suoliston bakteereja Tukholman Karolinisessa instituutissa 40 vuotta. Hän on todennut niiden yhdessä muodostavan elimistön biokemiallisesti aktiivisimman kokonaisuuden.
If you take the size of the cell, your cells are at least 100 times greater than any microbes that are within you. But if you take the number, then it is the other way around. The microbes, and most part is in your gastrointestinal tract, are outnumbering you with at least 1 to 100.
Suoliston bakteerikanta alkaa muodostua heti syntymän jälkeen. Mikrobiyhteisö on yksi maapallon tiheimmistä.
And when they are established, then you have a long-term effect of establishment. For each of them can switch on and off genes in your cells, and each of them may produce or may not produce some of the compounds that will act upon you.
Normaalin kehityksen kannalta pidetään tärkeänä, että lapsi altistuu oikeille bakteereille oikeaan aikaan.
So if, for instance, a child would acquire an abnormal set of microbes, or let's say a hostile set, it is possible that the metabolic development of the child is impaired, and that could include brain development. The important thing to remember in this context is that the development of your microbes from the time you're born, it takes about 3 years to get a sort of adult set of microbes. That's exactly the time course over which synaptic development occurs in the brain. You're making all your brain connections. They're pretty much completed by the age of 3.
Bakteerikannan kehityksen häiriintyminen saattaisi selittää tietyt autismin muodot. Niissä lapsi kehittyy aluksi normaalisti jopa 3 ikävuoteen asti, mutta vetäytyy sitten selittämättömästi omaan maailmaansa. Chicagon lähettyvillä asuva äiti ryhtyi etsimään syytä lapsensa kehityksen äkilliselle taantumiselle. Etsintä johti yllättävään havaintoon.
This is Andy at 1 year old. He had perfectly normal development, hitting all of his milestones. Mama, dada, baba, bye-bye, by, the age of 1.
Ellen Walten lapsista nuorin Andy syntyi vuonna 1992.
This is his 18-month shot. And this is where he's gone.
Andyllä todettiin lääkärin tarkastuksessa korvatulehdus ja pojalle määrättiin 10 päivän antibioottikuuri. Tulehdus ei kuitenkaan talttunut. Lääkäri määräsi lisää antibiootteja.
He was on his 6th course of antibiotics within a 2.5-3 month period. I guess the only way I can describe it is he started to shut down. He became withdrawn. He didn't want to be touched. He didn't want to be held.
Korvatulehduksen syyksi paljastui lopulta maitoyliherkkyys. Antibioottikuurit loppuivat, mutta käytöshäiriöt jatkuivat.
He regressed so dramatically that instantly he was seen by many specialists. Ultimately, though, what we were told was, we have no explanation. Things like this just happen. He has autism. He has very severe autism. At this point, Andrew's 4 years and 9 months old. He didn't like to really play with toys. He would pull the books off the bookshelves or VCR tapes off and just play with them on the floor, but not really in a meaningful way. He was very stiff and postured. A lot of toe walking, which is seen in children with autism. Of course, he's not really making eye contact here at all. He had no language at this point, just he uttered noises. Mostly he uttered E over and over again. He seemed healthy, except for, and this is very important, he had a lot of GI symptoms. His stool was foamy, mucousy, bulky. It wasn't like anything I ever seen come out of a kid before, and with 4 kids. He started to refuse to eat solid food, but he would eat non-edibles, tissue, paper, ashes from the fireplace, the drywall off the walls.
Elenia huolestutti, että kielellisen kehityksen herkkyyskausi oli Andyllä päättymässä.
I felt called to start researching in spite of having no medical background at all.
Ellen vertasi Andyn varhaislapsuutta normaalisti kehittyneiden lastensa ensimmäisiin elinvuosiin. Ainoa ero olivat antibioottikuurit. Asiaa tutkiessaan Ellen törmäsi pian Sydney Feingoldin nimeen.
One of the lesser known problems with antibiotic use is that they do impact the bowel flora.
90-vuotias Feingold on ansioitunut mikrobiologi. Hän on tutkinut suolistobakteeria vuosikymmenien ajan.
The human bowel is a remarkable organ. If you were to stretch it all out, it would be the dimensions of a tennis court. It has many different bacteria in it normally, a great variety, probably between 1,000 and 10,000 different types of bacteria. These children are susceptible to ear infections, and so they receive antibiotics, and the antibiotics intend to select out certain organisms while they suppress much of the rest of the flora. Now, the organisms that tend to persist are Clostridia.
Clostridium-bakteereja on noin 100 eri lajia. Niiden joukossa on sitkeitä, useille antibiooteille vastustuskykyisiä taudinaiheuttajia. Jotkut niistä tuottavat hermomyrkkyjä. Asiaa tutkiessaan Ellen havaitsi, että Clostridia voi hävittää kohdennetusti tietyllä antibiootilla.
I really felt, if we go on this premise, if we act on this premise, he can be helped. An antibiotic that specifically targets Clostridium in the intestinal tract could potentially be a huge benefit to him. So I started writing doctors. Many of them simply referred me to somebody else because they felt it was, outside of their expertise. It didn't clearly fit with infectious disease. It didn't clearly fit with gastroenterology. It didn't clearly fit with neurology, immunology. So I was hitting on all of these different specialists.
Toista vuotta ja kymmeniä asiantuntijoita myöhemmin Ellen löysi viimein lääkärin, joka oli halukas testaamaan Ellenin teoriaa. Andy sai 8 viikon pituisen vankomysiinikuurin.
The results were astounding.
Oh, wait.
Within a matter of just a few weeks, he became calm. He was aware of his environment and responsive enough to begin potty training, which was instantly successful.
Good boy!
He's now beginning to play with toys. He's leaving clothing on.
Yes. Yes. That's your new word, huh? Yes. And no. No. Good boy. Good thing. No. Oh, good boy.
He's putting puzzles together.
He does them all backwards. He did his name backwards. He's doing these all backwards.
Oh, nice kisses. More kisses?
That was the end of the 8-week trial. Dr. Sandler on the spot said, well, we need to test this with more children.
Ellen ja lääkäri kääntyivät Sidney Feingoldin puoleen.
So, Judy, you got some black colonies there?
Yes, these are grown nicely actually on these plate here.
Feingold päätti toistaa kokeen 11 muulla lapsella.
How long did they take to show up?
That took 2 weeks to come up.
2 weeks.
Pigmentation, yeah.
I've always felt that bacteria in the gut do things other than cause infections of the classic type. There was never evidence for it, and here was an opportunity where, even based on that one initial patient, Ellen Boldy's son, it seemed very logical that bacteria in the gut played an important role.
Feingold löysi lasten ulosteesta poikkeuksellisen suuria määriä Clostrideja. Selvällä enemmistöllä vointi koheni vankomysiinikuurin aikana. Antibioottien käyttöön liittyy kuitenkin pulma. Epäsuotuisissa oloissa Clostridit muodostavat lepotilassa olevia itiöitä.
Actually, spores are resistant to all known antibiotics. There isn't an antibiotic that I'm aware of that can kill a spore. Now, I was very concerned that even though we had treated the bacterial cells, I knew that spores remained. And I was quite concerned that when we removed the vancomycin, that any spores remaining in the intestinal tract would germinate and would be right back in business, shall we say. And that, sadly, is exactly what happened. So, there was a lot of very important skills that Andrew was able to maintain, but the behavior, the screaming, the irritability, the don't touch me, I don't want to look at you, the walking on his toes again, repetitive behaviors, those pretty much all came back.
Ellen laati lääketieteilijöiden kanssa tutkimusartikkelin, joka julkaistiin vuonna 2000 Journal of Child Neurology-lehdessä. Artikkeli ei kuitenkaan herättänyt kirjoittajien toivomaa huomiota. Autististen lasten suolistofloorassa on myöhemmissäkin tutkimuksissa löytynyt poikkeavan paljon klostriideja. Lääkärit eivät kuitenkaan ole tarttuneet yhteyteen.
I think we're going to have to do quite a bit more to convince people that are not infectious disease trained or trained in microbiology that bacteria can really do these kinds of things and that they can be controlled.
Artikkeli saatettiin sivuuttaa myös siksi, että sen katsottiin kannustavan laajempaan vankomysiinin käyttöön. Vankomysiini on usein viimeinen keino antibiooteille vastustuskykyisiä bakteereja vastaan. Tosin muillakin tekijöillä oli vaikutusta.
When the results of that study were released, it seems like what everybody focused on was the fact that the children regressed. And I acknowledge the children regressed, but that is not the point. Why did that happen? Why did they get better? Could it be a neurotoxin-producing bacteria in the gut that was suppressed by antibiotic treatment? I think that that's a valid question, and I think it's a question that has not been answered in 11 years since we published that paper.
Derek McFabe tutkii Länsi-Ontarion yliopistossa omaa suolistobakteereihin liittyvää teoriaansa.
I was aware of the paper by Dr. Sidney Feingold in UCLA showing unique populations of Clostridial bacteria in the digestive tracts of these children with regressive autism.
Klostridit tuottavat lyhytketjuista rasvahappoa, propionihappoa. Se ei ole hermomyrkky, mutta eläinkokeissa sen vaikutukset ovat dramaattiset.
And then in my previous work, we were working with this compound propionic acid, and we found that for such a simple molecule, it had very widespread effects in the central nervous system, affecting brain development, metabolism, and immune function. And then, we sort of put two and two together, and we said, hey, these bacteria in the gut, when children eat carbs, ferment the carbs and make propionic acid. And in addition, some of the foods that these children craved, in addition to being high carb, did in fact contain propionic acid as a food preservative.
Propionihappo on lisäaine E280. Sitä käytetään leipiin, kahvileipiin ja juustoihin muun muassa Euroopassa, Australiassa ja Pohjois-Amerikassa.
So we thought to take propionic acid and give it in small amounts to rodents and see if the behaviors or brain changes looked anything like autism and whether or not these behavioral and brain changes were transient.
Nämä rotat käyttäytyvät normaalisti. Sosiaalisina eläiminä ne tervehtivät nuukkimalla, viestivät toisilleen ja tutkivat ympäristöään. Propionihappo muuttaa koe-eläinten käyttäytymistä.
What we noticed remarkably within 2 minutes of putting this propionic acid in, this animal immediately starts exhibiting some very peculiar behaviors. Obviously, he's hyperactive and moving very quickly, and then repetitive behaviors. Here you see an abnormal posture of walking with a hunchback. And it's an unappreciated part of autism in that patients often have toe walking, abnormal posturing, arched back. So now we'll place another animal that's been given propionic acid. And a peculiar thing happens. They show none of the normal social greetings of two rodents seeing each other.
Propionihappoa pistoksena saaneiden rottien käyttäytymistä verrataan verrokkiryhmän käytökseen. Osalla koe-eläimistä esiintyi jäykkyyttä ja fiksaatiota esineisiin. Propionihapon vaikutus jäi kuitenkin lyhytaikaiseksi.
So now we're about a half an hour after we've exposed these two animals to propionic acids, and their behavior afterwards reverts back to normal. And it's a fat, so it's burned through metabolism. The animals become more social. Usually after their escapades, they tend to just go back to sleep. So again, we have a reversibility of hyperactivity and a reversibility of social behavior.
Propionihappo aiheutti rotilla autismin kaltaisia oireita. Mitä tarkalleen aine teki aivoille?
So do you have the lipids on the PPA rats?
Yes, here it is. This is what the final product looked like. When I finish this analysis, we'll be able to quantify whether or not there's any alteration in any of these components.
Aivojen rasvahappojen koostumus vaikuttaa käyttäytymiseen. Ray Thomas on tutkinut propionihapon vaikutusta aivosolujen kannalta välttämättömiin lipideihin.
What we found is that when we gave propionic acid, which is a metabolite from enteric bacteria, it has the propensity or the potential to alter brain fats. They alter the omega-3s, the omega-6, the saturate level. And these alterations that we found in the brain is closely related or similar to what has been reported in the blood of autistic patients. What we've shown is that with propionic acid, you get a fast change.
Remember, families are saying, my child gets worse with something associated with gut or diet. And sometimes when I make manipulations with diet or gut, my child gets better. We wanted a model that gets worse and better. And what Ray found with these amazingly specific changes in very key lipids that have to do with brain development, brain functioning, and brain energy metabolism. Imagine these gut bacteria produce the propionic acid as a metabolite. It'll fly through all bloodstreams to multiple cells, like all the other fats. But then when it comes to the nervous system, it can get in because it's a small molecule, but there are actually very specific compounds called transporters that actually grab the propionic acid and kind of suck it into the nervous system.
Propionihappo muuttaa aivojen rasvahappokoostumuksen samantapaiseksi kuin autistisilla potilailla. Aivoista 60% on rasvaa ja rasvan koostumus vaikuttaa solujen toimintaan ja käyttäytymiseen. Propionihappo saattaa jopa vaikuttaa autismiin yhdistettyjen geenien toimintaan.
Imagine this little molecule from your gut going directly into the nucleus where all your DNA is and acting as a switch to turn on and off important genes having to do with brain development, learning, and memory and metabolism. It's very intriguing that such a simple molecule can do such specific things in a brain metabolism and function that are very consistent with what's found in autism.
Tutkimus ei kyseenalaista lisäaineena käytetyn propionihapon turvallisuutta aikuisille. Tulos kuitenkin viittaa siihen, että suolistobakteerien tuottama propionihappo saattaa edistää autismin puhkeamista sille alttiilla lapsilla.
Normal or near normal people exposed to high levels of alcohol are not behaving as their normal selves. And by analogy, I think normal or near normal children exposed to high levels of propionic acid, gut bug metabolites, are not themselves. By removing the propionic acid, by either getting rid of the bug that makes it, not feeding the bugs that are there, healing the gut, or using compounds that help break it down, that will be the approach of treating this disease.
Yeah?
Pop, pop.
Oh no!
It's painful, to be honest. It's painful to watch it because we were so close. I really think that we were so close a decade ago to fixing this, but no one would listen.
Jotkut vanhemmat ovat ryhtyneet hoitamaan lapsiaan suolistobakteeriteorian mukaisesti.
Andrew is now 19 years old. It's hard to believe that it's been that many years. I do think that it's a war in Andrew's intestinal tract. There is a colony of, I believe, neurotoxin-producing bacteria that established itself and set up camp and set it up good and strong and at an early age. And basically what you become colonized with as a child, those are the bacteria you die with.
Andy ei voi loputtomiin syödä voimakkaita antibiootteja. Pitkäaikaisella käytöllä olisi vaaralliset haittavaikutukset. Ellen turvautuu suuriin määriin probiootteja. Ne näyttävät hillitsevän pojan oireilua. Vaikka klostriideja ei pysty hävittämään, ne voi pitää kurissa ruoansulatuskanavan mikrobistoa tasapainottavilla bakteereilla. Tutkimuksissa probiootit ovat auttaneet muitakin lapsia.
He functions very well, and that's a relative term. When I compare us to our baseline, I'm very happy with what he can do. Andrew is very self-sufficient. He can cook his own breakfast, pack his own lunch. Academically, he struggles beyond, a 3rd or 4th grade level. He still has some very impaired social skills. He is, though, delightful and a joy to be around the house.
Andrew, pretty soon you have to go to your track meet.
Hey.
And what are you going to do at your track meet?
Run fast.
Run fast.
Suolistofloran muokkaaminen saattaa lieventää autismin oireita. Kanadassa tutkitaan, voisiko suoliston bakteerikannan vaihtaa kokonaan suotuisampaan.
This to me is like a golden opportunity to really look and see what might be going on in this situation where I can sort of see that there's some problems with the gut and problems with development.
Guelphin yliopiston tutkijat ovat ryhtyneet yhteistyöhön Ontarion somaliyhteisön kanssa. Derek McFabe ja Emma Allen Werco ovat käynnistäneet tutkimuksen, jossa analysoidaan autististen lasten ulostennäytteitä. Allen Werco toivoo tutkimuksen paljastavan, mitä suolistoflorassa mahdollisesti on vikana.
And also this entire change that the Somali population has when they come from Somalia to Canada to a completely different country, a different culture, different foods in particular, and hearing the changes that might be happening in the diets that might therefore have some kind of knock-on effects with the bacteria that live in the gut. The old adage, we are what we eat, I think that's very important. In Somalia, they eat a lot of fermented foods, and that's a very staple part of their diets. They wouldn't necessarily do that in Canada.
It's the way we lived, the food we used to eat. No corn, no soy, no
Genetically modified things, no nothing. Everything is as natural as they can be. No pesticides, no hormones, nothing.
And maybe they have a microbe that's missing now from their diet because they're not getting it from fermented food. And maybe that microbe might have some direct interaction with other microbes in their gut. Now, if that's a missing piece, it's that no longer there. Their gut microbiota might actually not be functioning correctly anymore.
Alan Virchow tutkii, voiko suoliston bakteeristoa muokata lääketieteellisesti.
Over here we have the robo-gut, which is a very sort of coined phrase for our artificial gut system that we have here. Now here we're able to actually recapitulate the environment of the human gut, which enables us to culture some of the organisms just by growing them with their friends essentially as part of an ecosystem.
Alan Virchow tuottaa ensin keinotekoisen bakteeriston ja muokkaa sitä sitten selvittääkseen, mitä kokonaisuuden tasapainolle tapahtuu.
It's an ecosystem that is incredibly diverse. In fact, probably one of the most diverse ecosystems on the face of this planet. And I liken it to a rainforest. Everyone knows what happens when you start stripping species out of a ecosystem like a rainforest. You end up with a barren sort of landscape, and really the ecosystem just kind of crashes. And this is what we think is the kind of the basis for many diseases now.
Toiveena on, että viallinen mikrobisto voitaisiin jonain päivänä korvata toimivalla.
The idea would be that we would get rid of the bad ecosystem with antibiotics, with purging of some kind, and then replace it immediately with a healthy ecosystem that would allow that to establish and to take on the job of a healthy ecosystem.
So autism can be a shortage of some microbes and not a presence of some microbes. And that's difficult to investigate, but you have to do it.
Norjan Bergenissä autismin hoito suolistoperäisenä sairautena alkaa jo muistuttaa tiedettä. Tulokset näkyvät Ture Midtvetin omassa lähisuvussa. Midtvetin siskonpojan Lars Erslandin 2 pojasta nuorempi Erik on autistinen.
How old was he when you first made the diagnosis?
He was 6 years old when he got the diagnosis.
Okay.
But since he was 2.5 or something like that, he started to slip away. We didn't feel that we really had contact with him. But that was after he had some stomach illness when he was about 2.5.
Perheen vieraaksi on tullut Hanne Björk. Hän luopui urasta rahoitusalalla kokeillakseen, voisiko autismia hoitaa biolääketieteen keinoin.
Well, the history of why I'm working with autism at all is that I have 3 children that also have needed a lot of help. And we went through 17 doctors here to try and get help for the children. And none of them could help the children.
So, Hanna, what do you think about these tests?
Björk matkusti Yhdysvaltoihin oppiakseen auttamaan lapsiaan. Norjaan palattuaan hän oli mukana perustamassa Osloon sairaalaa, jossa autismia pyritään hoitamaan kokonaisvaltaisesti kehon kautta. Ajatus on suhteellisen uusi.
The official statement is that in Norway is that autism is not treatable. That's the official statement in Norway. It's something new for the medical community, but probably not for the parents who's been working with kids for a long time.
Hoito alkaa tutustumisesta lapsen taustoihin ja tapoihin.
You always have a 7 days period where the parents tell what the children eat, how they behave, reports from the school, and how they sleep, and And with that as a base, we go further and do some medical examination of the child. One thing that we see is that on the vitamin side, it looks like some of his values has gone up quite a bit. And it's interesting to see if that has any relation to his bacterial status or not.
Björk kartoittaa asiantuntijoiden avustuksella ja kokein potilaan ruoansulatuselimistön toimintaa. Hän muokkaa ruokavaliota ja seuraa samalla muutoksia suolistofloorassa ja käytöksessä.
We normally start with milk and wean them off that and take away all the different products that have milk in it, which are a lot. And then you do the same with gluten.
We met Hanna and her colleagues in Oslo, and we realized that what we thought was without gluten, without milk, without corn, really wasn't.
So I have to make all the bakery myself, and I also had to divide the kitchen in as one gluten-free place and one with gluten.
Ei tiedetä, miksi gluteenin ja kaseinin karsiminen ruokavaliosta näyttää auttavan joitain lapsia. Todennäköisin selitys on, että mikrobien epätasapaino estää ravintoaineiden hyödyntämisen ja vaikuttaa aivoihin. Erikin sosiaaliset ja älylliset kyvyt ovat kohentuneet. Pojan vanhemmat kuitenkin toivovat, että edistystä tapahtuu lisää.
It's very important that the parents fight for their children and that they are a team together with the doctor and the advisors, because it's the parents who are closest to the child. So the parents can then tell the doctor how the child is developing.
There was a carefully conducted clinical trial of a gluten-free, casein-free diet. And after the better part of a year, they had to close down the placebo arm because the kids on the diet were doing so well. To most people, the idea that someone could get over autism is completely inconceivable, because they believe that autism is a lifelong immutable condition wired into the brain that cannot be changed. And I've come to the conclusion that there really isn't evidence to prove that assumption.
And what's this?
5 minutes.
Yeah,
Cool down.
that's your cool down.
Opposite of exhausted is.
Opposite of exhausted is have energy.
Have energy means.
Can keep going. What's this up here?
Distance.
Yeah. That's how many miles you're running, huh?
Okay.
Yeah, I don't think you ran 345 miles, honey. Okay. But it looks good. I
cling to the hope that research is going to be done in time, and that he'll be able to receive treatment, and that he will be able to still respond due to plasticity of the brain. Who's to say?
There could be a future where we screen for these weird fatty acids in children, we screen for these bacteria in children, and we help children by either eradicating the bacteria, having healthy bacteria to keep these bad bugs down, helping the person to metabolize these fatty acids, just like giving insulin to a diabetic to help them metabolize sugars. The model reflects a changing neurological disorder.
They really have GI issue. And when you have a gut problem, nothing else is gonna work. I would love to hear his voice. That's the most important things. He understands more now. He understands everything you tell him, but he can't say the words. So that's one of the biggest for me to see, Alice speak and call me mom one day.
Suolistobakteeriston häiriöt herkissä kehitysvaiheissa saattavat altistaa joillekin autismin muodoille. Tutkijat yrittävät selvittää, millä tavoin mikrobit vaikuttavat aivoihin. Toiveena on, että autismi sittenkin olisi hoidettavissa, mahdollisesti jopa ehkäistävissä.
Until fairly recently, we assumed that, or we just didn't really give the gut microbiota any thought whatsoever. And we just thought of it. We knew that the bugs were there, but we thought that they were just benignly there because they ate the waste products that we couldn't eat, and so why not? The finding that they're actually there and they're important and they're doing something that is contributing to health is a fairly new realization. We were really at the dawn of realizing that.